What we're experiencing right now is a great power confrontation. So it's not merely merely in quotation marks, a Russian war in Ukraine or Russian invasion of Ukraine. It is a U.S.-Russia confrontation. But what's striking is that the U.S. is engaged in two fronts, one with Russia, the other with China. And we're seeing a lot of belligerency by the United States towards China in recent years as well. This started around 2014, roughly actually the time of those events in Ukraine, but really for somewhat different reasons, but are also escalating. And today there's news reports that I find, if it weren't so deadly and dangerous, I'd find it satirical. It's stories in the mainstream media saying, don't worry, the Ukraine war is not going to divert American attention from China. In other words, we're still going to have an antagonistic view to China. We're still going to make alliances in Asia. Don't worry. And this is explaining that we can do both. We can confront Russia. We can confront China. And I'm saying, oh, my God, is this for real? Do we really want World War III? Is this our death wish? Is this our insanity? Is this our craziness of our exceptionalism? But there is this feeling. We're in a two-front feeling in the U.S., and they're trying to talk NATO into opening an Asia mission. In fact, the Secretary General of NATO, Jens Stoltenberg, has said in the past year that NATO is going to direct its attention to China. Now, all of this is incredibly important for climate because China is essential for global climate policy, for cooperation, for every dimension of the climate crisis. China by itself can wreck the global climate because it emits about 28% of the greenhouse gases, in the United States about 14%. But just remember, since they're 4 times larger than we are in population, our per capita impact is much, much larger. But China better get this under control or we have a disaster. So are we sitting down to talk with China about this? Are we working out common systems? Are we working out technology standards? Are we agreeing to co-finance projects for decarbonization around the world? Well, I think you could probably guess the answer is no to all of those. We are changing the rhetoric regarding Taiwan. We are drumming up a drumbeat on Taiwan whenever, in the rare moments when U.S. so-called diplomats, but I don't find them very diplomatic, meet with Chinese counterparts, almost the first word out of their mouth is Taiwan. Because what they want to do is, I don't know why, but they want to annoy and provoke China, and probably, and it could not be more dangerous, encourage Taiwan into some kind of adventure that would be incredibly dangerous for Taiwan. I admire Taiwan enormously. And because of that, I would keep the temperature down so that there is no tension, rather than raising the temperature, which I think can only hurt every dimension of this. Now, I was just speaking with the specialized funds around the world addressing some of the core sustainable development issues, the Green Climate Fund, the Global Environment Facility, the Global Fund to Fight AIDS, TB, and Malaria, and so forth. And what they're saying is the war in Ukraine is causing donors to say, you know what, we promised you, we can't really deliver, so we're going to be late. You have to understand, we have a rising military budget, we have a crisis, refugees. Well, this is what war does. War crowds out, even, I mean, literally survival, but it crowds out any kind of longer term thinking. And climate requires 30 years of investment in a concerted way, in a cooperative manner, in a trans-border manner. You don't decarbonize on a whim. You have to make plans. You have to invest in new power systems, power generation, transmission systems, grids that take 10, 15, 20 years to bring to fruition. So all of this makes the climate agenda fraught. And also in the short term, of course, it's bizarre. You have the Biden administration, which came into office as a climate champion, trying to raise production of fossil fuels and say, go for it, because we have to offset the production that we're trying to keep from being exported from Russia. So politically, you turn on the spigot again, rather than saying, no, you should be phasing out and phasing in something else. We say, go for it. Go for the coal, oil, and gas, because that will defeat Russia. And this is, these politicians are really going to be the end of us unless we are able to get a politics that really works for our well-being, not a politics that works for their incredibly short-run horizons.
Yeah, there have been many calls in Europe and elsewhere to speed up the transition to renewable energy as a result of this war. I know you've been skeptical in other interviews that this war will actually inspire that kind of necessary action. I mean, how has the decision to end Russian fossil fuel imports impacted the clean energy transition here and abroad?
I would say again that the first thing is it just distracts, because if you want to make a transition, you need clear long-term thinking. Clear long-term thinking, at least for me, requires some quiet. Okay, we need to think through 10 years, 20 years, what are we going to do? But with war, it's day-to-day, it's improvisation, it's budgets that are shifted for armaments. And in a very practical way, it's reopening coal mines, reopening fracking, reopening gas fields, because you scramble in the short term when energy prices soar, which they have soared in recent weeks. And with sudden cutoffs of Russian gas, well, now Europe is taking whatever actions it can to keep the lights on, to keep the air conditioning on this summer and so forth. And that means that we're not in a long-term planning mode. You could say, and there is a certain sense, well, Russia shouldn't be exporting fossil fuels for the long term. So all of this is in the direction of long-term change. And indeed, I said to Russian friends and the Russian government for years, of course you have to decarbonize. There cannot be a petro state in 2050. There can be a